This is The High Road with author and registered psychotherapist, Dr. Marlene Bizub. Dr. Marlene speaks to the heart of people who need to be lifted up and get out of the muck and mire that often accompanies major life changes, such as divorce or separation. Dr. Marlene will aspire to help parents of divorce to love their children more than they hate their ex, and to learn to take the high road. So please welcome the host of The High Road, Dr. Marlene.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. George, thank you for being here again.
Great to be with you, Dr. Marlene, and good morning, at least in our time zone.
Right. Um, well, now that we're an hour earlier, I guess we do still have people in the afternoon. Well, across the world, we have people in all kinds of time zones. But anyway, good topic today, or it's one that's near and dear to my heart. And that's because I have got the greatest suggestions for parents, grandparents, any adults who are dealing with what we're going to talk about. And so I'm going to leave everyone in suspense, but I have the greatest suggestions for what parents can say to kids under these circumstances. But what these circumstances are kids, and I'm sure you hear about it. You don't usually meet with the kids, or not a whole lot, but I'm sure you hear about this from your parents and they don't know what to do. The kids go from household to household, and for lack of better word, I'm going to call it gossip. They just gossip from household to household, and they get a lot of attention for doing that because they know the other parent is curious about what the other parent is doing. And so they'll go back to the other parent's house and say, "You know what mom's doing? You know what mom said? You know what she said about you?" And we fall for it. So I'm going to stop right there because I'm not going to get into the solution quite yet. But I'm sure you hear about this from the parents that you work with.
Well, what I would hear is that one parent is using the child to be manipulative,
Yes.
and what can we do about it? And that's a tough question as far as legally filing a motion of some sort or post-decree motion. That really doesn't address it. So
Right.
what comes to mind is the importance of following protocol on communicating with the parents with each other. Because if they can
Yes.
present a united front to a child misbehaving or being manipulative, I think it's going to be more successful than if the parents are exploiting or using the child's misbehavior or gossip to try to make that to their advantage.
Right. Because kids are going to tell their parents things that are not exactly accurate. And I don't
Mhm.
want to say they're lying, but they are often fibbing a little, fabricating, exaggerating, minimizing, whatever it may be. But if they don't think the parents, you make a really good point, and this isn't where I was headed, but I am happy to head there because this is a really good point. That if kids think parents aren't communicating, then they're going to get away with telling them all kinds of things that may or may not be true. And it might be something as simple as mom lets me have my dessert before supper. And then once you press the issue, it turns into, once you say, "Well, let me ask your mom about that." Then they say, "Well, no, she let me taste it one time before I ate my meal, but just so I could have a taste. But I had to wait to eat it until after my dinner." The truth starts coming out. But when they know you're not going to communicate, they'll tell you all kinds of things. And one I get a lot from kids because they want to watch shows on TV or computer or whatever, or play video games that they should not be playing, or shows they should not be watching. They are age inappropriate. And they will say, well, mom lets me play this game. Dad lets me watch this show. Well, if you're not asking the other parent, you don't know if they are or not. And the whole thing is, you don't even have to really ask them. But what you have to do is make your kids think you're going to ask them. Just one time say, well, let me ask your mom about that. Let me talk to your dad about that. I'm just curious why he thinks that's okay. And then they'll go, well, he didn't actually know I was watching, but I did watch it. Well, that's not the same as him knowing.
No, in fact, I think most of the time they don't know, or unless they are really polarized on their own standards, what they think is appropriate for the children. And then again, it's the importance of the court order, the protocol. A lot of times I'll see a court order that would say that the parents will follow the ratings for movies and television, things like that, because
Yes.
they try to address that issue in advance, anticipate, and head off any problems.
Right. And that is something when I teach the level 2 co-parenting class, I tell the parents, and this is true. This is true. I have yet to have a court deny a request to put that item in the parenting plan. And the way I word it is saying the same thing as what you just said, but the specific way I word it is both parents will observe the age appropriate rating guidelines for movies, video games, and other media. And that covers everything, computer, TV, movies, video games, all of that. And I have yet to have a judge not want to order that. If we ask for it, we usually get it.
Yeah, I really can't imagine a judge turning down that request to have that language in the order.
No, no. Now, the hard part is policing it because I have parents tell me I am sure the other parent is letting them watch things they shouldn't or play video games they shouldn't. And then I ask the other parent and they say, oh no, I didn't let them do that. Well, either the kid is lying or the parent just didn't know that the kid was watching or playing whatever they were. Um, but policing it is a whole different matter. And I always go back to this because I think the best way for parents to police anything after they've been to court, post decree, is to have a PCDM, a parenting coordinator, decision maker on their case that works with them for up to 2 years. Because in 2 years' time, we usually run into whatever we're going to run into for the next 8 or 10 or 12 years that these parents are going to co-parent these kids.
Well, my supposition is that the kids, particularly teenagers, will know if the parents are oppositional with each other about one of these issues. And they will either
Yes.
withdraw or say, well, my friends do such and such, or I'm going over to my friend's house. And the real motivation is so they can do things that their own parent or parents prohibit. So
Hmm.
it's a tricky road to navigate, but it's so important. And if the parents can be united, I think that avoids a lot of problems.
Well, it does because, kids being allowed to play a video game in one house and not in the other, I mean, that's kind of unfair to them. And I don't know that they always remember which house they're in and whether or not they're supposed to be playing this game. And so, yeah, if the parents are consistent, we don't have to worry about, am I at mom's and can I do this? Or am I at dad's and I can't do this? Or whatever it may be.
I think so. And again, it's so important that the parents can communicate at least about the standards that they're going to observe for their children. If they can't communicate in person or by phone, perhaps they can use one of the apps or email to communicate. But it's so important, I think, that they be united and consistent with their kids, because
Right.
otherwise they're just inviting problems.
Right. Right. They really are. And you know what's interesting about that is when the parents try to do this themselves. And I'm not saying no parents out there have ever been able to work together, because that is certainly not true. But if they have me on a case, they need some help. And what happens is one parent will ask the other, can we kind of agree on household rules? And the other resists. No, you can't tell me what to do in my home. You've been dictating how I parent for as long as we've been together. And you're not going to tell me how to parent my kids anymore. That's what we get. But here's what's funny. And this is why I said a PCDM is, I think, magic to a case. I will call the parent and say, hey, I'd like to just kind of go over what your rules are. And then I'm going to talk to her or him about what their rules are and just see if we're consistent and if we can get consistent. Are you okay with that? And they're like, sure. Yeah, I'll do that. I don't get this. No, he or she is not going to control me, because it's me asking, not them.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction, and that,
Yeah.
oh, he or she is trying to control me, manipulate me still, and that's why we're divorced to begin with. And down the road you go. I agree. Having a parent coordinator decision maker is often a golden solution to these types of concerns.
It really is. It really is. I spent 3 hours and 40 minutes last evening with a family, and we agreed, we got to talking about just the expense and stress and all that of litigating and how long it takes. And we agreed that we're going to work everything out in my office. Now, it didn't get worked out last night, even after 3 hours and 40 minutes, but at least we all agreed that litigating is not the answer. And we all know that we have to go to court to get the divorce, so yeah, you're litigating. But I'm talking post decree, going back because you want to hold this one in contempt, and, you want more child support or pay less child support or whatever it is. It's like those are the kind of things that we need to sit right here and work out, especially when it comes to parenting time and the parenting plan.
Yeah, I don't think going in front of a judge for 2 hours is the best way to construct the most satisfying plan that
Right.
satisfies the needs and the desires of as many people, as many desires as can be addressed. The better forum to do that is probably in something like your office as opposed to the courtroom.
Right, right. I certainly think so. And
Now, I
it's
mean,
just a,
as
oh,
a
go
as a
ahead.
con- as a confession behind closed doors, lawyers will often say never hesitate to litigate.
Right,
So
right,
we're not always oriented toward the most constructive solution, because litigation typically in family law tends to be pretty destructive and really ramps up anger and is not really a solution to those types of problems.
right, right. And, I say all the time, because, that kind of gives an attorney a bad name, but you're just doing your job. I mean, that's your job. But is it always the best solution? Probably not.
No, there's no question, and we're restricted to seeking the goals for the representation that are outlined by the client. So if the
Yes.
client is recalcitrant and unyielding, and we can't reform their outlook a little bit, then we're stuck with the mandate to seek their instructions for the representation, and we're ethically obligated to do that. So if we can't reform their attitude and their outlook by counseling them, advising them, then we're obligated to seek sole decision making, sole custody, those types of things that parent outlines that they want for the representation.
Yes. Yes. And a lot of people, they don't realize that, and they think that it's really up to you. And I mean, you provide guidance and counseling, but ultimately what they decide they want you to do is pretty much what you have to do, correct?
Absolutely correct. And I think when we see clients, oftentimes they're so angry and they're so scared
Yes.
that they are really putting out that fear, and they want reassurance from the attorney. And unfortunately, what they want reassurance as to is what they want to get in the case. And we can't always provide that kind of reassurance because
Right.
it's uncertain. You go in front of that judge and you think you know what's going to happen. You think you have a pretty good idea, and oftentimes the train goes off the track as far as that's concerned.
Right. Right. And judges might do one thing one day, and a very similar set of circumstances, they do something else. And I'm sure they have their reason, but you can't predict from day to day. I've even told clients, yeah, we just had this happen in a case yesterday, and here's the way it went. And we're in front of the same judge and very similar circumstances, and it goes a different way. And there can be a variety of reasons for that, the age of the children, or just the gut feeling that the judge gets from each of the parents. But they don't realize that we can't give them guarantees. And we don't know what a judge is going to do on a given case. They might just be having a bad day, too.
Well, that's true, and oftentimes the judge will enter an order that orders the parties to behave in a certain way, to communicate in a certain way, and they really have no experience at that at all. And
Right.
so they're not educated by the judge. That's not the judge's job to sit there and educate the parents on how to implement the order. And that again is where your PCDM is so critical.
Yes. Yes, it really is because they aren't taught, parents aren't taught what the rules of co-parenting are, and they aren't taught how to carry out their order. They're just given this order. But like you said, they don't often know what some of that means. What does that look like to not disparage the other parent? Or, they're like, I don't even know what that means, and I don't do that well, but you might in very subtle ways that you don't even realize you're doing. Maybe not verbally, or maybe you think a certain thing you say is not disparaging, but it really is. And so, yeah, there's education that needs to take place here. And, if you don't have someone on your case and you can get through carrying out the order on your own without a hitch, great, that's great. But more times than not, especially in high conflict cases, that's not the case. And they are going to fight about every little thing.
Yeah, there's no question about it, and it's self-perpetuating at that point.
Yes, yes, it truly is. And then the kids, going back to the kids get empowered. That gives them a lot of power to be able to affect how their parents co-parent and how they communicate and how they get along.
Yeah, and that's a piece that I really don't have anything to do with. I don't get to see
Right.
that or deal with the kids' manipulation of the parents and those types of things. And there's either a vacuum there or there's a PCDM there to fill that vacuum.
That's right. That's right. Well, this is a great place to stop and revisit this when we come back, but let's take a quick break. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, we're talking about kids gossiping between households, the power it gives them to do that. And I do want to get to, because I'm very excited to share a couple of things just that I've learned over the years, I've picked up from other wiser people over the years. But it gives kids a lot of power to go from household to household and say, you know what mom's doing? You know what dad said? You know what he said about you? And we get caught up in that. We, as divorced parents, I'm one too, remarried now for, it'll be 30 years this year, and now I'm dating myself. But I am a co-parent, to my son's father. And we tend, especially back then, I mean, now we don't deal with this, but back then it was very easy to get sucked into that and caught up in what did he say? What did he say about me? Stuff like that. Instead of a much better comeback, which I'm going to give you in a minute. But before I do, I want to stop right there and ask you, George. I know you don't hear from the kids and work directly with them, but I'm sure you have heard from parents. My kid came back and told me that my ex told him this. And what do I do about it? I'm sure you've heard that.
Not only do I hear that, but my ex has done so and so, or my ex is now has a relationship with somebody, and I don't think that's good for my kid. And so there's frustration on the part of the parent that they can't control what goes on at the other household.
That's right. And I'm glad you brought that example up, because if you're a parent who doesn't want to hear from your kids what's going on, then be the parent who shares what's going on in your life with the other parents so they don't have to hear it through the kids. Because typically, whatever one parent does, the other parent's going to follow suit, so to speak. And if you're sharing what's going on in your life that's relevant, not everything, but if you're dating someone new, you might want to let the other parent know that before they hear it from your kids. You will avoid a lot of ill feelings and comments made that shouldn't be made if you just communicate about what's going on.
I think the way I hear that, however, is so-and-so's trying to control me.
Right, right. And it's really not control. It
No,
really isn't.
I think that's how it's interpreted by
Right,
the client oftentimes.
right. Well, and sometimes it is, but more times than not, that's not what it's about. It's just don't let me hear it from the child, because your reaction when the child tells you something you're not expecting to hear can be something that is not so great for your child to see, you know? And if you've already heard it, you already know it. Yes, I know your dad's girlfriend is going on this trip to see your grandparents with you and your dad, something like that. It avoids that. What? She's going? Well, where's she sleeping? Where are you guys sleeping? I mean, we get all of that stuff.
I think
So, yeah, go ahead.
the maturity that you're asking of people is difficult to achieve for them.
It
Uh,
is.
I really believe that with the fear and the anger that they have, I think those are the two most prevalent emotions that I see or that I try to deal with. Not the most effectively, of course, but are fear and anger. And
Oh, I
so
totally agree. Yeah.
to get past that really requires some navigation. And again, for the attorney, I think the mental health professional is the best friend they can have, because they can
Right.
teach. They can have teaching moments with the parents that we
Mhm.
just don't have.
Right, right, exactly. And we can identify for them, you're grieving, you're angry, and that's part of the grieving process. And this is part of what you're going to go through before you're on the other side of this. And it takes time. I mean, it's not quick and easy, but often when you identify what you're feeling is grief and loss, then they can deal with it better because at least they are able to identify what it is they're feeling instead of just, I'm so angry, but they don't realize that it's really part of grief.
I think the sooner that the parents can work through that grieving cycle, the
Hmm.
better it is for the children, because they can focus on what the children's needs are instead of their own. They're so caught up in their own needs, if you will, emotionally. But if they can get through that, I think that's probably best for the children. It is more likely to result in communication between the parents, constructive behavior between the parents. But it's all part of the same process. And I think a lot of
Hmm.
times people don't understand that they're going to have to work through that process.
Yes, yes. Well, and kids too. I've got a little 8-year-old girl who sat and just sobbed in my office last week. And I said, honey, go right ahead. She thought I was going to say, honey, knock it off. And I didn't at all. I said, you go right ahead and get that out, get it out. You need to cry. And she's just sobbing because it dawned on her that the kids, the mom, and the dad would never all be together again, like for a holiday or a weekend or something like that. And at 8, it had just dawned on her, had not dawned on her before, that mom and dad and you guys are not going to be going to Elitch's anymore together. And once she realized that those family times as a family, I said, you might go with mom, you might go with dad, but you're probably not going to go with mom and dad. And like I said, she just sobbed, but she needed to. And that's grief. And kids go through grief and loss too.
And that has to be heart rendering to observe.
It
But
is.
and so fortunately, I don't deal with that because I don't have the skills to deal with it.
You would do fine, George. You would do fine. Well, getting back to the kids and gossiping, and again, we give them a lot of power when we react. When a parent tells us, or a child tells us something about the other parent, and we react, boy, does that give children power. And what I mean is they are watching us react, in real time. They tell us something and we get all upset. That's powerful just because kids are affecting our emotions. We are no longer calm and steady and solid. And it's okay for kids to see you cry. And it's okay for you to be sad or mad, depending on how you handle it. But what often comes out is not pretty and is not what they need to see. And I'm going to go through again the scenario where the kid comes in and says, "You know what mom told me? You know what she said about you? You know what grandma said?" And we get sucked in and we go, "What? What did they say? Well, let me tell you something about your grandmother." And then it's on. And plus, like I said, that kid sees you react. Here's what I want parents to learn. And there's a lot of anticipation that has to take place for you to react like this. But here's what we want to do. And this is golden. Okay. We want to say, well, did they want me to hear what they said about me? Is it going to make me feel good to hear what they said about me? Those are magical words. Because when you say, if they didn't intend for me to hear it, and it's not going to make me feel good to hear it, I'm not quite sure why you want to tell me.
Wow.
And that puts a kid, isn't that great? Isn't that
Yeah, that
great?
really does. That puts a kid on the spot and makes them
Yeah,
responsible without giving them power to be manipulative.
right, right. Because that is what they're being, and they don't even realize it. They're not intentionally thinking, I'll manipulate my parent today. But they know they get a reaction. They know they have information that they think you want. And we have to show them that we don't want it. That
I th-
if it's not, yeah, go ahead.
I think especially once children reach teenage years, they're really aware of their ability to manipulate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. No, I totally agree. They know what they're doing once they're teenagers. But you get those kids who are 6, 8, 10, 12, even, right before the teenage years. And they sometimes don't even realize what they're doing. They just know you react, and that gives them power to say something to you that makes you react.
Sure. And I think, as you say, they may not even be aware of it, but they're exercising that power. And it can really set off the parent. I've parents that I've seen, nothing can set them off more than the child, uh, either what they're saying about the other parent or what's going on at the other household. Uh, the children have a lot of power to manipulate the mood and the attitude of mom or dad, or mom and dad.
Yes, yes. And when you give a response like what I gave a few minutes ago, when you say, is it going to make me feel good? And did they want me to hear it?
Mhm.
And if not, why would you want to share it with me? You're teaching them something. You're teaching them that gossip is destructive, it's hurtful, it's harmful, you know. And you can say that to them too. You can say, really what you're doing, and you want to be kind, because we do want them to absorb what we're saying. And if you're mad and angry, they're not going to. Um, but just kindly say, really what you're doing is gossiping. And gossip is destructive and it's hurtful and harmful. And if you're going to tell someone something that isn't going to make them feel good, and the person who said it didn't intend for them to hear it, maybe you should just keep that to yourself and not repeat it, you know. And that's powerful. We're teaching them not to gossip and that it's destructive.
And how has that been received in your experience by the child?
It is amazing how many kids grab onto that and get it, and then feel kind of bad, as they should, but they feel kind of bad that they were doing or saying something that really was going to hurt their parents' feelings, because that wasn't their intent. They just get attention for sharing stuff like that. And so I think they feel bad. And again, it teaches them a mature lesson that, you don't need to share things that hurt someone's feelings. That's
I
not a
think
good thing. Hmm.
it may be a little bit naive and aspirational, but I think if the parents are taking the high road, then they're a little bit careful about what they say in the earshot of the children.
Right, right. Yes, because you're right. Let's go back to the parent who said it. They shouldn't have been saying those things in front of the children. And something else I do, I mean, this is another good point. Um, I tell kids, you have to be polite, you have to be respectful, but it is okay to say to your parent when they're speaking negatively about the other parent or your grandparent or whoever, to kindly say, that hurts my feelings when you say that about my dad or my mom. Even if it's true, it might be true. It still hurts my feelings to hear that. That is perfectly okay because sometimes we need to put those parents in check too.
Yeah, I think that's probably more consistent that the parents are saying things that they shouldn't in the hearing of the children, and they need to learn not to do that, I guess, because
Right.
certainly that brings anger back, and they come back to me with, can we go to court on a post decree motion because so and so has moved in his or her girlfriend, and I don't want my kids to be around that, and the courts just don't deal with that stuff.
No, no, they don't. In fact, I had a parent say last night, I wonder how the court's going to feel about the mother of this teenage child approaching adulthood. The mother went to another town where the child's boyfriend lives, and they spent the night, the daughter and the mother, with the boyfriend's family, with the parents. And I said, well, I don't think, first of all, the court is going to care because they just don't get involved in how you parent your children. But it could be that a court's going to say, well, good, at least mom stayed and was there and didn't just leave her child there in the house with the child's boyfriend, even if his parents were home. And he was the dad that was saying this to me was kind of floored that the court wouldn't care. But they don't. I mean, they don't get involved in how we parent our children unless it rises to the level of endangerment, but this is far from endangerment, you know?
Yeah, I think this is just a give and take of the day-to-day parenting roles, uh, and here again, they need to learn to communicate in a way that doesn't incentivize anger and retaliation. That
Right.
doesn't come naturally, and particularly at a time when they're grieving and angry themselves.
Mhm. Mhm. And it's a hard thing to say to parents, or it's hard for them to hear that you don't have any say so over that because they're just not used to that. And to say you have no say so over your ex-wife allowing her daughter to stay with her boyfriend and his family and staying with her. You have no say so over that anymore. So you can think what you want of it, but you probably need to keep your thoughts to yourself because there's nothing you can do about it. Parents are allowed to make those kinds of decisions without talking to the other parent. And that's hard for parents to hear. That was hard for him to receive.
It really is, particularly, and I heard that so often where one parent, my client, wants to change the structure of the household or the way the household is run by the ex, and it just isn't going to happen. The court's not going
No.
to get into the minutia like that.
No, and whether or not they can move a boyfriend or girlfriend in, they're not gonna get involved in that, so, yeah, this is the stuff we deal with. Alright, it's time to take another quick break, though, so we'll pick this back up, when we come back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, we were talking about parents not having any control over, or not a lot, over what parents do in their own household. And things like having a boyfriend or girlfriend move in is not something the other parent's going to have any control over. And yet, this is where I'm sure you do hear a lot of parents say, we got to go back to court. We got to prevent this from happening. I mean, how does that play out? And how do they receive it when you tell them court's not going to care?
I think the initial response is frustration. Maybe they want to seek out another attorney for a second opinion, which is fine, because they're going to get, hopefully, consistent responses from different lawyers about the extent to which the court will insert itself into the post-decree relationship that the parents have. And of course, if the parents will simply take the high road with each other in their parenting, then the odds of them going back to court post-decree go way, way down.
Right, right. And again, like we were saying earlier, if you let the other parent know what you're doing, it's like you're saying, basic communication, simple communication. Let them know. Do you have to report to them? No. But does it go a long way to let them know what's going on in your life so they don't hear it from the kids? Yes. And the kids shouldn't be messengers. They shouldn't be the ones telling the other parent, and you'll put a stop to that if one time you say, yeah, I know your mom or dad already told me. They'll stop trying to deliver messages because they know you're already going to know.
Yeah, that would be a terrific response. I mean, my inner child already is sort of speechless about that,
Right.
but it makes the point.
Yes. Yeah. And some parents just don't get it. It's like, nope, we are divorced now. I'm not telling her or him anything. Well, then you're opening up a lot of just turmoil for your kids and yourself, because all of you are going to go through all this kind of stuff that we're talking about, where there's just a lot of gossip and stuff going on. And It's not healthy for anyone. And it's really not what we want to teach our kids.
Well, and it's interesting to me, sometimes parents behave in a way they, or I should say, misbehave uh, while they're involved in divorce or after divorce proceedings in a way that they did not behave during the marriage or the relationship. And
Right.
now sometimes their behavior is what brought them to that point to separate in the first place. But
Yes.
a lot of times behavior that is not okay when they're together, seemingly they think all of a sudden it's okay once they're separated or divorced.
Right. Right. No, you make a really good point because that is so true. People will behave in ways that they've never behaved before and will very likely never behave again. But this tends to bring out the worst in people, and they do behave in ways that they know better than to behave. And they'll tell you later, I knew I shouldn't have done that, or I know that now, but in the moment I was so upset that I just blurted it out. Well, damage is already done. You can't take back words that are said and information that is shared.
No, and here again, I think it's almost unfair to kids to expect them to moderate their parents' behavior. And it's
Yes.
very it's very artful for them to do that, very skillful for them to do that. And they too need to learn skills or have tools to be able to respond appropriately.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And I do work with kids on that too. But,
And I don't. I'm
right,
completely out of the loop on that. So
right.
I'm reading between the lines here and stepping in your lane a little bit. I apologize.
Oh, no, I'm glad that you are because you've been around for a while and I know you've seen all of this. And you might not work directly with the kids, but you know what to tell the parents. And, earlier we were talking about a good thing to ask them when they gossip is, was I meant to hear this? Is it going to make me feel good to hear it? My other piece of advice that I want to impart today is a perfectly good response to your children. And this, I'm sure you've told parents before, is it's an adult issue and you don't need to worry about it. Now, are they always going to accept that and be happy with that? No, but in time, they're going to learn that that's what your response is going to be. So they can stop asking, they can stop gossiping, because your response when they ask you things, trying to get information to take back to the other parent, is going to be it's an adult issue and you don't need to worry about it. And
Yeah, I think
they will come to respect it.
yeah, I think that's very effective. Anything that kind of takes the child out of the loop between the parents is probably desirable because
Yes,
it's an aggravator.
it is. It is. And I have a story, I've told it many times, and I'll tell a very brief version of it. But an 11-year-old I had in my office years ago, and she hated me because I said she wasn't going to know what was going on between her parents anymore. They were going to stop sharing all this adult stuff with her. But 5 years later, when she was 16, she walked in my office and thanked me because she said, "You were the only person who let me be a kid. And I hated you at the time, but thank you." They appreciate it later and respect it later. But I have to tell you, I'm not the hero there. I wish I was, but I wasn't. I told her, honey, you need to go home and thank your parents because I tell all the parents I work with the same thing. And some parents get it and some don't. And your parents did. And they are the ones who chose to leave you out of adult stuff. So you go home and thank them.
Yeah,
But many parents never get it.
I think that's that you're foregoing a little bit of credit there that you deserve.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, some parents do have to hear it. They have to be told. But some will embrace it and follow it, and others just won't. They're just not going to have someone like me tell them what they are or are not going to share with their children. And it's like, okay, you're going to pay the price.
Yeah, I think when they're later teens, they probably resent being used by their parents and it makes them withdraw from them. I would
It
speculate.
does. It does. No, they get very resentful and they will say, I'm not your messenger. You need to tell mom or dad that yourself.
Mhm.
I'm not getting in the middle of it, stuff like that. And so, yeah, the older they get, especially those teenage years, when they're going through that process of individuation and separation and becoming their own person, they will resent it and they will stand up to you. And as well, they should.
Yeah, it's a learning process for probably all involved. All the family members could stand some of the post-decree education that is offered, for example, in the co-parenting class.
Yes, yes. And we've got to do a better job as a society of providing post decree education. We really do. But it's out there.
Well, it certainly cuts down on the post-decree litigation, that's for sure.
Yes, for sure. And that's our goal. Ultimately, that's our goal. Well, it is hard to believe that we are almost out of time once again. But thank you again, George, for doing this with me. I appreciate your wisdom more than you know.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you, Dr. Marlene, and I always learn a lot.
Well, thanks. We do too. I do too from you, and I'm sure the audience does as well. Well, this is Dr. Marlene and George, and you've been watching The High Road on Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.
Tune in to The High Road with host Dr. Marlene and gain insight into how to rise above tough circumstances and learn the skills that will help you take the high road in your life, no matter what challenges might come your way, on the next episode of The High Road.